achievement on the other side of resistance. You know, a bit like what you're saying, a lot of people hit that and go, oh, well, can't get there. You know, there's something stopping me. But it's just a matter of almost welcoming that, because once you hit that, you think, okay, now I'm close. You know, once you've got that resistance, you think, okay, this is supposed to be here. Whereas rather than just sort of thinking, okay, I just want to head down a straight downhill path, it just doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
If it was like that, everybody would be down.
Yeah. That wall is almost an indicator that there's something truly valuable for me to gain from this. Because if there was no wall there, then as you said, you wouldn't get that gratification from completing the goal, because it was already within your sphere of possibility. Hey mate, I'm Coach Mitch and welcome to the Unbreakable Man podcast. It's my goal to help you achieve excellent results in the area of your health and physical fitness, your career or business, your relationships, and in your own personal passions. This is going to be your one-stop shop if you are the kind of man who wants to achieve his fullest potential in life. And the only way to do that is by becoming unbreakable. All right, welcome to the Unbreakable Man podcast. And today I'm sitting with a good friend of mine, Greg Kite. How are you, Gregsy? Good to have you here, brother.
Thanks, mate.
And full transparency, Gregsy's actually a member of the Unbreakable Man team as well. So as much as we're going to have a great conversation and hopefully share some wisdom and insights with you guys, we're also going to get some insights into what it's like to be a member of the Unbreakable Man team as well. Now, I want to start off just by introducing you to the audience and helping everyone who's listening to this get a measure of who you are as a man. So my first question for you then, mate, is what is something that you just do for fun? What do you do when you just want to entertain yourself, feel alive, that kind of thing?
Sure. Like everybody, you know, I like spending time with friends and family, and, you know, whether it be a, birthday, Father's Day, Christmas, whatever, that's probably, that's probably when, we're all in our happy place. But if it's just me selfishly, anything adventure-based is sort of my MO. I like getting out into nature, for want of a better word, regardless of what that means. I mean, it could be anything. And I really like the variety of what nature has to offer. I like mountain biking and just trekking through the bush, or trail running, adventure motorbike riding, getting out into rainforests and things like that. Or I like surf ski paddling in the ocean. Just sort of the feeling of being away from the city a little bit, being surrounded by something that hasn't sort of changed a lot in a few 100,000 years. It's just a peaceful place, just to sort of reflect on what's going on without too much external interaction
and distractions as well. Hey? Yeah, exactly. Yep. It's just nice, peaceful. There's something about, being surrounded by green and fresh air and cool breeze and all that kind of stuff that is I enjoy it a lot as well.
Yeah, I think it's necessary. It's a really, really good stress reliever, just to get away from the stimulation of the city. The city is just full of, color and information and, just
light,
movement,
everything,
light, and just it's just majorly stimulating. I think we need to just let that go once in a while, and just get out there, be amongst it, and it sort of allows you to sort of slow down a little bit and don't have to process the information quite as fast. Just take it a bit easy. And I think it's once just feel a little bit rejuvenated after you come back from a ride, a run, a walk, a paddle, whatever. It just feels a little bit easier to handle the day that comes.
Awesome. Yeah, brilliant. And obviously you've done quite a bit of that, and we'll probably get into the meat of that as this podcast goes by. But my next question for you is, what is a book that's it made an impression on you in your life, has had a big influence on how you think, or how you perceive the world?
Yeah. The book that I probably had more of an effect on how I live is a bit of a classic by Dale Carnegie called How to Win Friends and Influence People. A lot of people know it. A lot of people have heard of it. It's a little bit almost cliche
Sure.
as far as a self-help book, for want of a better word. But what I took out of it, well, see, I believe that our success through life is going to depend on how well we are at dealing with other people. We always have to interact with people. It's going to happen, whether it be a stranger, a colleague, a family member, mates, whatever. It doesn't matter. So our ability to be able to work with other people and try and understand their motivations a little bit better are going to help out our journey through life. And in that book, my main takeaway from it, of all the little stories and things that were in it, which is great, was it was just the ability to try and understand how other people are interpreting things. So, and I think back on a story that I read in that book, and it was to do with Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln, American president. And it told about how he was a young, sort of brash, almost cocky lawyer, and he'd be, writing letters and insulting people and using his sort of intellectual paucity to, put people down. And somebody challenged him to a duel because he was, completely offended by it, and he didn't like it. And
It's all right, put your dukes up then, mate. Let's go.
It was a bit like that, and he had no way of sort of, back in the day, maintaining his honour without standing. Anyway, it was close. I think in the end, however duels work, their second stepped in or something, but could have been the end of him. It could have been done all because he was sort of being, bit too cocky. And so in that, he learned that he had to sort of understand it from that guy's point of view and sort of think, okay, well, why did he think a certain way? Why was that? So it made him sort of really concentrate on that. And so taking from that, I'm always, not that I'm particularly good at it, always trying to improve, just understanding somebody's opinion based on their environment and their upbringing and, what's influenced them. So just try and understand that and understand from their point of view. And it just makes you, much better to be able to, work with that person and achieve an outcome that's going to be good for both of you.
Yeah, absolutely, man. One of the things I often think is, why is there not a communication skills class in school? Like, it's something we are going to do every single day of our lives. As you said, it's also one of the most valuable skills for anyone to have. Like, I think that if you become a great communicator, you don't need to be good at anything else, and you'll be successful in your life. You'll have a great relationships, you'll have a good business, you're going to surround yourself with quality people as well. So I think people underestimate how important that is. And what you just said about just having a good understanding of the person that you're trying to communicate with just completely changes the game in terms of how you're going to communicate with that person, even the tone of voice that you're going to use and the vocabulary that you're going to use as well. Because whilst it's easy to think, well, I shouldn't have to do that. It's like, well, mate, what would you rather have? Would you rather be right? Or would you rather have the result? And if you're the kind of person who really just wants to be right, sure, go for it. But I think you're gonna run into a lot of issues in your life that you're gonna wish that you decided to be the kind of person that was just focused on getting the result. Focused on leaving a good impression, regardless of, whether you had to perhaps change your communication style a little bit, or, instead of not running headlong into a fight with your partner, perhaps it's trying to understand, okay, well, why are they doing this thing over and over again? I think we all have those things about the people we care about in our life that they do consistently that piss us off. And for most of us, our reaction is, well, just stop it. It's like, okay, well, obviously it's not that easy, otherwise they would have. So there's something more going on. What is happening that's recreating this scenario over and over again? And once you know that, because you've asked yourself that question, then you can start to adjust your actions to suit the situation and be effective. So I think that's a great point.
Interesting you say that, because there's times whereas you might, whether it be a relationship with a romantic partner or a business partner or a friend or what have you, I'm thinking back on times whereas I've been frustrated with something and I've sat on it to the point whereas it's like, I've got to say something about this. And you come in and you say it probably a little bit too aggressively, and it might be because it's a frustration point. You say, okay, listen, I'm sick of this because of X, Y, Z. And you think that your position is so clear that person's, got no other place to go other than say, oh, yeah, I suppose. But you say your point, and they come out with something that's, yeah, but X, Y, Z, and you think, what? How can you possibly think that? But the point is that they do think that, and they do think that for a particular reason. So why is it that, they aren't wrong? That's how they've interpreted what's going on. So trying to understand why they're interpreting in such a way means that you can then come to a resolution a lot better. I think sometimes people can misunderstand the term good communicator, because it almost thinks that if you're a good communicator, you're good at getting your point across. You're good at saying what you think. But that's only half, actually probably not even half of communication. What's more important in good communication is understanding them, by listening, listening, but understanding why they think like that, So I just, like I said, I'm not saying I'm particularly good at it, but it's always something that I'm trying to always, be mindful of and try and understand it.
Yeah, nice. That's great. What would you say is your favorite sport?
Adventure racing.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So it's a little known sport.
Bit left field.
Yeah. It's a little bit obscure. It's quite niche. Not a lot of people do it. But I'll break it down in the sense of adventure racing is almost always 3 disciplines: mountain biking, trekking, and paddling. But as well as that, it involves navigation. So a lot of people would think, it's like the Anaconda adventure race, but not really. That's what we call a multi-sport race, which is a linear race, and everybody goes the same way. In adventure racing, what will generally happen is that it'll be either a determined course or sometimes a determined time frame. So you've got an X amount of hours to complete a particular thing. You'll get a map and a set of instructions before the race. So it might be an hour, might be 2 hours, might be the evening before the race. And then once you've got that, you've literally got a pencil case full of, you bring a pencil case full of highlighters and what have you, a couple of measuring tools, and you'll sit there and on that map, you'll have to say, start with a trek leg. And on that trek leg, you'll need to pick up a certain amount of checkpoints. Now, you're allowed to go to that checkpoint however you want. If it's a foot, you've just got to be on foot. You can't take your boat or your bike, but you've got to get there however you want. You can go straight over the hill. You can climb over cliffs. A lot of people will say, like orienteering. It's like, yeah, a little bit like that, but orienteering is often a 10K run. This is something that can last anywhere from a 3 hour is what they call a sprint race, or a multi-day up to a 5 day is what they call an expedition race, and then everything in between. So what I like about it, what gets me so excited about it, is that there's just no time to get bored. If you're a cyclist and you're riding out there 5, 6, 7 days a week, sometimes it can feel like you're doing the same thing. If you're a paddler, it's just, okay. If you're a swimmer, you're looking at that black line forever, whereas I find with this, it's just always something to do. And it's a little bit of sometimes it feels like you're not getting good enough at any of it, because you've got so much to work on all the time. You're trying to be a good paddler. You want to be a strong mountain biker. You want to be good on your feet and a good runner. And sometimes it feels like there's not enough hours in the day and not enough time to train.
That's part of the challenge, isn't it? And that's why I think, a lot of people would return to something like that, is because there's always progress to be made. Once you get really good at something, it stops being cool. You know what I mean? Like, no one's stoked that they can walk, but there was a time in their life where that was a big deal when they started walking, right? But now we're so good at it, we don't even think about it. It just happens, So I think perhaps something that, a lot of the dudes listening to this, if you're struggling in your life, or maybe you're feeling a bit depressed or a bit down, maybe it's not that your life is too challenging. Maybe there's not enough challenge in your life. I'm not saying that your life isn't hard, but perhaps you're not pushing yourself enough. Perhaps things are too comfortable. Perhaps things are too easy. Perhaps things are too well known to you to give you that reason to really push yourself and see what you're made of, which I think is obviously, tell me if I'm wrong, but that's probably something you get out of doing adventure racing, is finding out, can I do this? Is this something that I can achieve?
Definitely. And it's always something where when you add the element of navigation into it, it also brings an element of just looking for that perfect race. Let me give you an example. if you do a triathlon, let's say you take on a triathlon, whether it be an Olympic distance triathlon or a Ironman half or an Ironman full, whatever, you're doing it. How much time have you got to train in the lead up? How disciplined can you be in that training? You do it, it's finished. Cool. With adventure racing, not only have you got the fitness element of it, but it's like, okay, how well did you get your navigation? When you planned it, did you go the right way? I mean, you've got to do a quick mind calculation to say, can we go up and over that hill faster than we can go around it? You know, so it's almost a bit of maths involved there. It's saying, okay, well, we're going to move this fast around this way, or this hard around, this fast over this way. Is going straight over that going to fatigue me for the rest of the race? Should I stay flat and fast? Should I go straight? And then having a look at the lie of the land, following the maps and seeing where the water courses are going. Should I follow those water courses? And not only that, you've then got to find the checkpoint because it's literally in the middle of nowhere. It's not on the corner of a road. It's in the middle of a bush, halfway up a creek line. Things like that. So bringing that element into it. And then, of course, put all that together with you competing against other people. It's like, well, how well did I do compared to everybody else? How well did I do compared to myself? Was I satisfied with my own race, with my own fitness, with my own technique in the various disciplines? How well did I navigate? How well did we do? Did we get in the top 10? Did we win it? Things like that. So, it's
awesome.
There's plenty to really just sort of get you. Just touching on what you were saying earlier about, whether there's enough in your life. To me, I heard somebody once say that pleasure's a bad motivator because once you've got it, well then what's left? And they were saying that the better motivator is achievement. And the only way that you can achieve something is to have resistance. To actually have to push through. But once you actually push through that and you achieve it, well, then that's gratifying. And that gratifying is a satisfaction that's way above just a happy time. It takes that resistance to be able to achieve that. And I mean, I think a lot of people don't find that because we stop pushing, we stop sort of finding, we hit that resistance and we go, well, let's not worry about it, But it's the other side of that resistance, whereas you're really going to find happiness.
Sure. And look, I think that even going a step further than that is that if you can get yourself to the point where you enjoy facing resistance, then now you've really got a leg up because if you're a goal-orientated person and you're trying to create change in your life, you're going to spend a lot more time pushing against resistance than you are actually achieving things. Like the achievement is like 0.5% at the end of the journey.
Let me bring a paradox to you though. If you're enjoying it, do you have more to give? Are you not meeting that? Are you not meeting that resistance? I mean, you might be going there and you're thinking, I'm enjoying this. It's like, well, are you? Should you be pushing harder if you're really trying to meet that resistance? I'm not.
It's a great point.
I'm not saying I've got the answer to it, but I'm just, I always wonder that, where I'm thinking, whether I'm riding up a hill and finding something like trekking, and thinking, this is going okay. It's like, well, if this is going okay, should I be going harder than this? Should I be actually feeling that? And then knowing that once that's completed and you've finished it and you're sitting down, you're going to go, whoa, that was awesome.
For sure.
The harder you go, some of the sessions we have have in the morning, you push hard. Sometimes if you don't really give it everything, you go home, you sit and it was all right, but I could have given more. But the ones that you bend over the fence, try not to throw up, for most of the session, you go back and the rest of the day you're just going, I feel great now because that was done. I've done it. I've achieved something that was very, very difficult. I've done it. Now the day's just set this platform to everything's going to feel better today.
I think my answer for that paradox is that there's a balance in everything because you do need to enjoy the process, at least to some degree. Otherwise, let's say you are the most successful person in the world, but you've hated every single step of the way. And it's like, okay, well, sure, you're now the most successful person in the world, but you just spent how much of your time hating your life? So I think that enjoying the resistance doesn't mean that what you're doing is easy and you're crushing it. I think perhaps you find value and maybe some sort of twisted sense of pleasure in the pain or in the suffering or in what that means to you.
But do you find it when you're going through it or when it's completed?
Personally, I think I've both. Is that, and I probably sometimes I remind myself when things start to hurt or when I start to feel anxious. Let's say I'm about to walk onto the mat at a jiu-jitsu tournament. You know, it's the most anxiety producing part of that experience for me. But in those moments, I remind myself that because I'm feeling that way, I'm in the right place. And it's kind of like, I give myself that little pat on the back that, Mitch, you're doing the right thing. And whilst that doesn't necessarily make the situation any less scary, I feel good about my decision to be there. And I feel good about what I'm about to do, as opposed to it just being something that freaks me out. So a lot of it is just how you talk to yourself in that moment as well. Like, what is the conversation you're having with yourself? And what are you reminding yourself of as you're going through that process? And that is something that, you know, for all the guys listening to this, part of you becoming the man that you want to be, if you want to be a fantastic, like the best that you could be, part of that is learning to become your own coach and being able to have those conversations with yourself in those moments. And that's not to say that you shouldn't have an actual coach, but there's going to be moments where your coach isn't there, you know, and there's no one who can get you through that other than yourself, because you're still the dude that's got to take the action at the end of the day.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, no, you certainly have to be self-motivated, you know. Yeah, you're the only one that's taking those first steps.
Absolutely. And I think it's not even just motivation, because you can be motivated without perhaps lacking the experience of how to talk to yourself in those situations too. So I think a little bit of it is also like, you know, it's doing that personal work on yourself to understand your triggers, understand, you know, the things that get to you, and, you know, understand perhaps, you know, when we were talking about communication earlier, you know, what is it that some people can say to you that just stops you from communicating as effectively as you could be, or stops you from being the best guy that you could be in that conversation. You know, it's becoming aware of those things, I think, is really, really crucial. And that only comes with time, and also actually understanding that that's important, because it's not something that we often talk about. You know, for guys listening to this, that might be the first time you've ever considered being aware of how you feel in certain moments, or how you, you know, perhaps what some of those automatic things that come up for you in certain moments are. So, obviously, you know, you're a member of the Unbreakable Man team, and that really ties in quite well with your experience of XPD, you know, because it is such a massive challenge, you know, and talking specifically about the 5-day, was it a 5-day race that you did?
Took us 5.
Right? Took 5 days, right? You know, and throughout that process, obviously I'll ask you this question, but I would imagine there'd be quite a lot of those self-coaching moments where you've got to have that conversation with yourself. And you know, for everyone listening, that's what Unbreakable Man's all about. It's not about being perfect. It's not about winning all the time. It's about being the kind of guy who can push himself through those challenges in his life. And that's what being unbreakable is all about. It's not the perfect man, it's the unbreakable man. And I think that if you know, the reason why it's called Unbreakable Man is because I think that if you are able to create that sort of mindset in your life, you know, the path you'll take to get to your goals might be a bit ziggy-zaggy, but you'll get there because you're not allowing any of the challenges that you face along the way to break your spirit and to stop you from wanting that for yourself. You know, so when you were going through that experience, 5 days, you know, you're out in the bush, what was the total distance, just for those at home?
Okay, so first I'll break down what XBD is probably.
Okay.
So XBD is...
definition.
At the time, there's actually, I've got some friends doing one as we speak. They're literally in the Snowy Mountains right now.
Cool.
Doing an expedition race. This is the first year of that one, however. But at the time, 2021, I think, it was the only expedition race in Australia. It was so this one was held in Cairns in winter, middle of winter.
Thank God.
Yeah, and it covered about a bit over 500 k's, and it involved multiple disciplines of paddling, trekking, and riding. And it also had what they call a rope section, which is a bit of an abseil that's in the middle of it. A couple of lanyards to sort of work your way down a canyon area. Relatively mild compared to mountaineering, obviously, because it's in the middle of the race with limited resources that people have got to sort of fend for themselves. But it's a non-stop race, which means that you don't sort of, even though you go into checkpoints and transition areas, the clock doesn't stop. You're sort of continuing, so you've got to come up with your own sleep strategy, whatever that looks like. So you've got to make the decision about how much sleep you are or aren't going to have. Sometimes that can be in a transition area where they do have a couple of generic tents set up that you can just jump into, or it can be literally out on the trail when you just can't move anymore and you say, as a team, you decide that you're going to have a sleep. You do it in a team of 4, and for the most part, the team's got to be together all the time unless there's a particular point where a leg, has been instructed that you need to split up into 2 or sometimes individually. But for the most part, you're staying together, or within sort of talking distance you have to be. The race is supported by the organisers in the event. Whereas you get at the beginning something called a logistics planner to say, even though you don't know the course, you say, well, your first paddle is going to be 22 Ks, and then you're going to have this, and then you're going to have that, and then you're going to have that. They tell you to you get 4. You're allowed to use 4 big boxes, crates about yay big. And they tell you at what transition area is what's going to come up next. So you know that in that crate at that particular time, you need to have your bike shoes, your bike helmet, or in that one, you need to have your life jacket, your paddle, things like that. So you've got your bike gear there and so on and so forth. You need to pack your own food based on there. On that logistics planner, they give you an estimated time. So it's say, for example, a trek of might be between, 18 hours and 25 hours or something like that. So the fast teams are expected to do in 18, the slower teams are expected to do in 25. So you know that you're out on course for a day. So carry food. Carry your pack, which is usually a sort of a high volume, almost like a runner's pack. Couple of bottles in here and camel packs and all that sort of stuff, and then you have some compulsory items that you need to put in there, e.g. a bivvy bag, sometimes a sleeping bag, obviously food and water, a space blanket, and some minor first aid things that everybody has to carry. Naturally, you've got to carry your compass, and then every team's carrying a tracker, position tracker that sits in there, so you sort of know where you are out in the middle of nowhere. So then, as you go through that race, there's a combination of all those things that you were talking about, in the sense of not only are you sort of pushing as hard as you can to try and do things, and things are getting steep and you're getting smashed by water in the waves sometimes, you're trying not to fall out of your kayak, sometimes you're in a river, in things, all those types of things.
Crocodiles and cats?
No, we asked that question. And
that's a good question.
I put it first, but we were up over, so it wasn't so much Cairns. We started in Cairns, but pretty quickly we got over into a bit west, over the range and into the hills out west. The word was, it's not that they've never been there, but there's not much there.
Great.
There was one particular water source that we were sitting there, and we had to fill up at it, and I was it was like you just sort of got to sit there and just watch and make sure. But I must say, filling up water bladders. I don't know if you remember the scene from Crocodile Dundee where she's filling up water, but anyway, it's on your mind. But they sort of did go over it. We've got crocodiles and jellyfish and snakes and all that sort of stuff that they sort of put through. We didn't run into anything, but it's
possible. Yeah,
it's up there. You've sort of got to keep your eye out.
It's another thing to consider on top of a 5-day 400 kilometer.
Yep. So you're going through those particular things, and you've got strong legs and not as strong legs, and mix that in with lack of sleep and exhaustion, and getting your nutrition and your food right and all that sort of thing. And it's 100%. You go through ups and downs, and it's time to sleep, time to get up. You don't want to, but as a team, it really helps as a team because you don't want to let your teammates down either. You don't want to be the the weak link or the anchor, we call it in adventure racing. You don't want to be the one that everybody's just dragging along with you. And what I learned early is that the other thing that you've in adventure racing is don't be afraid to sort of say that you're struggling, because I would always go in there and think, oh, the last thing I want to be is, the weaker one, the anchor that everybody's sort of going, oh, wait again. But what I found out is that throughout a race of that duration, everybody goes up and down. And you're going to have a low point. And if you're feeling good, don't feel too bad about the guy or the girl that's struggling. Oh, incidentally, one thing I didn't add, the beauty about, or one of the great things about adventure racing is the premier category is mixed. So, when you do it, you've often looking for a girl to come into your team. So our team was 3 guys and a girl, Amanda. And she was awesome. So just super strong, women in adventure racing, it's a funny thing, we see a lot in sport about how much of an advantage males have with, strength and bone density and things like that. But women in adventure racing, they're just so constant. They seem to do it so well, if not better. When it gets tough and needs to push through, man, they're not holding the team up, I can assure you. And that happens a lot. And most people in adventure racing will explain that to you. It's just, they're strong. They're strong. And Amanda on our team, she was awesome. She really was. But everybody goes up and down, and when you're down, you think, oh, this is it, I'm done. How can I go on? You're thinking about 3 days worth of things in front of you. You've got a 50k paddle coming up, a 100k ride, or something like that, and you're just thinking, oh, I can't do this. But then, sure enough, you just go through the motions. You just keep putting one foot in front of the other, and then all of a sudden, half an hour later, maybe you're not thinking about the pain as much. And then another hour later, you're thinking, oh, it's not so bad. And then another hour later, you're supporting somebody who's sort of, falling off a little bit. And it's just, you've eaten a bit more, you've taken on some water, things have changed. It just, but it's more about, and again, to use a principle that we talk about, it's more about just simply setting the action that needs to be done and just doing it because that's what has to be done. You set out the path. This is the goal, no matter how difficult it might be to get to the end of that. To do it, we just need to do this. And there's going to be ups and downs along the way, but if you just keep doing what you need to do the little things right, everything else comes together.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. It's like, is finishing that important to you? And finishing could mean finishing your XPD race. Finishing could mean getting the job that you want, or creating the relationship that you want, or having the fitness that you want. Is finishing, how important is finishing to you? And not that there's ever really a finishing, right? So then the next thing comes up. But, sometimes trying to get where you want to get is just ugly. And there's no pretty, nice, fluffy way to do it. It's just, it's going to suck. And you're going to have to really push yourself. And that's why we do our half-day events, and we do the Unbreakable Man retreat, and we obviously push ourselves weekly in the gym. But the whole point of that is so that you have some personal experience of pushing yourself, so that you know what you're capable of. You don't have to ask yourself the question, can I do a 5-day, 500-kilometer event and wonder about it? You already know. You've had the experience. And that's not to say it would be easy if you did it again, but it's something that's within the realm of possibility for you. And then you're also asking yourself the question, like anything less than that, which is most things, you're like, it's in the bag. Or it's well within the realm of possibility for me. You're not wondering, can I do a 100k ride? You can. You're not wondering, can you do a 40k hike? You can. Might not necessarily be easy. There'll be some blisters and some pain and some cramps and all that stuff, but you can do it. And you know that now because you've had the experience.
Yeah, I like the way that David Goggins put it too. He called it, collecting cookies in your cookie jar, and I must say that, there are a lot of situations whereas you're in the thick of something and you're thinking, this is pretty tough. But then if you can relate an experience that you've had previous that was difficult and you did overcome it, then it's just that. It's a matter of, well, listen, I've done this before. I continued to do X, Y, Z. This was the outcome. So I just need to repeat that. In this situation, I just need to put one foot in front of the other. The very first adventure race I did of any reasonable length was a race called GeoQuest, and it was down. They always have them around Coffs Harbour, somewhere between Yamba and Newcastle. Adventure race, and they move them around because nobody wants to do the same course. So if you do an adventure race one year and they take you to the same place, it's like, been there, done that. What's next? So adventure race organisers, race directors, it's sort of their obligation. They've got to move it around to different areas. So a particular race that happens every year usually has an area that they work within. Anyway, GeoQuest is another one, and they're somewhere there on the north coast of New South Wales. This particular one was the first one I'd done of anything more than about a 6-hour race. And they call it a 24-hour race, but that's sort of like an average or what have you. So the faster teams, and I was with a fast team, strong team. They were good at everything, and we did. And this was the first race that I'd done. And the guy that sort of introduced me, Brett's his name, a sort of old guard of adventure racing. This old guy, tough as nails, sort of got a reputation for it. And he was sort of coming off, and he was sort of taking it easy a little bit, and he was saying, "Come on, let's do this race." And I'm going, "Mate, come on, done about that," because I was sort of just gaining my fitness. He's going, "Oh, yeah, it's not what you think. It's easier than that. Come on, have fun, drink coffee. That'll be our motto." And I'm going, "Oh, I do like both of those things, yeah." But I should have known, because he's one of these guys that just can't do that. It's just as soon as the gun goes off, it's like, right, let's go. Anyway, sure enough, and I was pretty fit at the time, so I was okay. I was a little bit concerned because I didn't know it. But we get out and we're straight onto foot onto a trek, and that's my weak leg. I don't run very well by comparison to how I ride and paddle. So we're sort of doing it, and I'm thinking, oh, this is hard work, So throughout the day, and then we came in about 2. We started about 8:30 in the morning, and by about 2:30 in the afternoon, I was sort of falling off the back on bikes, and then I was just struggling, and just everything was just tough. And I'm thinking, and we're not even halfway through this race yet, and I'm almost done. I'm blowing up here. I'm thinking, oh, how am I going to, I'm letting the team down. And sure enough, we did this thing. We came into night time. We had put our headlamps on. We're sort of running through the night, and I'm thinking, oh, this is terrible. Somebody offered to carry my pack for me. Mark was his name. And it was only light, a couple of kilos. There wasn't much in it, but, I was like, well, geez, that feels better. Just to sort of have that little bit of relief. And just bit by bit, I started to feel a bit better, and took on some more food and drank some more water and what have you, and just sort of pushed through it, and bit by bit until the end of that, the long run leg, which was about 15K or something for this particular race through the bush, until we got back on the bikes again. But by the end of that run leg, I was sort of, and as I was explaining earlier, it doesn't come fast. It just sort of, you start to forget about how much pain you're going through. It doesn't feel as bad anymore, and before you know it, you're sort of, shoulders are back, your chest is up a bit, your form's a little bit better, and you think, oh, I've come out of it. And then we sort of rode. It was only a 10K ride, but we were a fast riding team. That was our main thing. So we just went like a bullet. Mark got on the front, who's a really good rider, and we were just tucked in behind him like a pursuit team, cycling pursuit team, and we were just trying to hold on and what have you. And then we got on the boat, and anyway, we ended up winning it at about 1:30 at night, finishing in about 17 or 18 hours. So really good result for our first sort of big race. But that was a real typical cookie in the cookie jar. It really was something that it sort of said to me that just when you think you're done, when you think you're about to blow up, and you think, oh, this is it. I'm going to have to tell these guys I can't go on any further. I'm going to be pulling the whole team out of the race, and they're going to, we're going to go home with our tail between our legs after we're sort of leading this race. But just sort of, said, no, just do what you can. Go, just continue to sort of, put one foot in front of the other, and before you know it, like, you slowly come out of that thing. So it really was one of those moments, whereas it's like, okay, I remember that now. So now, when it's other times that I'm in a race or doing anything, whether it might even be a UBM Evo or something like that that's tough, it's like, no, you went through that. I know that if you go through that, it's gonna come out in the end. It's not going to be like that forever. Just keep going, and before you know it, sure enough, and it's happened to me so many times where I think, oh, I'm buggered here, and at the end of it, you sort of think, no, I'm finishing this strong. And it was just one of those learning experiences. That's really one of the big cookies that I draw on a lot now.
Nice. That's great. I'm noticing a whole bunch of stuff from your experience of XBD that I think ties in really well with stuff we've already spoken about. Like, for example, communication skills. You're in a team. You need to you don't want to ruffle any feathers in your team, but you also need to push the guys along. So it's like, how do I motivate the other people in my team? And even if I'm the one who's struggling, how do I communicate in a way that doesn't ruffle any feathers? Or how do I not let my frustration get the better of me and perhaps cause me to say something that I don't really mean? And then it's also that kind of self-coaching element to it as well. And then, as you said as well, like one of the real benefits is not just having the experience, but now you have a reference that you get to look back on when you're struggling some other area of your life. And it gives you that knowledge that I can actually get through this. And one thing you said there that was really great is one of the key things it sounds like you now understand about yourself is that when that bit of doubt comes into your brain, which is what I would say most people go, I'm done. I can't do any more, right? As soon as they start to doubt their ability, then it's downhill from there for a lot of people. And that's why, again, I think a lot of guys don't have what they want in their life, don't have the body they want, don't have the relationships they want, the job they want, maybe they're not ticking off those bucket list experiences, because as soon as that doubt creeps into their mind, they stop taking the steps. But what you've learned from that experience is that just because you're going through a low point in the journey doesn't mean that it can't improve from there, and doesn't mean that's you at the end of your gas tank. There's more in the body, and I think that so many people have no idea what they're physically capable of and what they're mentally capable of if they just committed themselves to building that physical fitness and then also that mental fitness as well. And that's what comes from these experiences. You now have the training underneath you, but then you also have the understanding of yourself. You're a bit more self-aware than you were before, which is, that's as you already said, that's already gotten you through things since then, and will continue to be one of those cookies for you, and perhaps might set you up for another cookie that you're going to get in the future from something that perhaps is outside of your comfort zone still. So that's awesome.
Yeah, and it's also just that understanding that achievement on the other side of resistance. A bit like what you're saying, a lot of people hit that and go, oh, well, can't get there. There's something stopping me. But it's just a matter of almost welcoming that, because once you hit that, you think, okay, now I'm close. Once you've got that resistance, you think, okay, this is supposed to be here. Whereas rather than just sort of thinking, okay, I just want to head down a straight downhill path, it just doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
If it was like that, everybody would be down.
Yeah. That wall is almost an indicator that there's something truly valuable for me to gain from this. Because if there was no wall there, then as you said, you wouldn't get that gratification from completing the goal, because it was already within your sphere of possibility. Whereas things that are outside of that sphere require you to break down some barriers until you can expand yourself and your ability to include that new challenge within what's possible for yourself.
Yeah, definitely.
Nice. So just a few more questions. And, obviously this podcast is about helping men get through their struggles. It's about helping men, despite the challenges, despite the barriers, to still create the experience of life that they're looking for by becoming unbreakable, right? So, and every single guy has their struggles in some area of their life. So, and I don't want anyone who's listening to this to ever think that either myself or anyone else who comes on this podcast doesn't have a struggle, doesn't have something that they are yet to add to their sphere of possibility for themselves. So what is something that you struggle with, Gregsy? What's a medal that you have yet to collect?
My biggest challenge throughout life is probably body weight. A lot of people, I see a lot of people, a lot of men in their 30s, 40s, and what have you, and they've been sort of, young guys, fit guys and what have you, and then they hit 30s and their metabolism slows down, and they do a little bit less exercise, and they they don't change, they drink a bit more or something like that. They put on a bit of weight and what have you, and it's like, oh geez, I better do something about this. I'm not like what I was in my 20s. That wasn't me. That's completely opposite of that. I was the little chunky kid that that was walking at the end of the cross country. So that's always been a constant in my life. Before it was fashionable. Whereas, I remember in my school there was, my class there was 2 overweight kids and I was one of them. So now it's a fair bit of it, unfortunately. But that's something that went right through my life into teenage. And I guess the difference between me is that I wasn't sort of a little nerdy bookworm. I always liked sport and I always liked it and I always enjoyed doing it. Different levels of success. I was never a superstar at anything, but I just always wanted to do it. I liked riding bikes. I liked doing this. So it never really sort of went away. When I came out of school, when I went into sort of high school and started to move away and got a bit of independence, went away from mum's cooking and, had a bit of disposable income to buy my own takeaway and still having that sort of, that teenage or that childish, impulse control. I was just, eating rubbish and things like that, to the point, because when I left school, I was about 145 kilos. So I was, really, really big kid. And that wasn't much fun and I didn't like it. And regardless of, but, to sort of cover that, to be as popular as you want to be, if you don't look a certain way or, good at footy or do whatever, you need to compensate it. So I'd sort of overcompensate that with humour, and I'd try and be the funny one, and what have you. So I maintain my friendship group by trying to be jovial and fun. And that, I think you see that in a lot of people that are carrying a lot of weight. And I don't want to speak for them, but it is a mask. It is a way of finding relevance in the world, to try and find your thing. So that sort of developed through my formative years. And then sort of got to the point that really, it was just sort of like, not that there was an actual event, but it really did feel like a rock bottom. I don't like this. I don't like being here. This isn't what I want to be. So, I wanted to meet girls and things like that. I just didn't like, being that body weight. So it was just a fight against it. So when, just said, okay, I'm going to stop doing this rubbish and, dedicate myself and eat better and what have you. And, over the years, dropped a lot of weight down and what have you. And, I've been a lot lower than I have now, been a lot bigger than I have now, but it's just something that it's not a matter of, okay, cool, I'll get fit for this particular race, bang, they're good. Now I don't have to worry about it. It's just something that I'm always mindful of, and I need to constantly work it. Mm-hmm. It's not something that, and it's been going on long enough that I've resigned myself to the fact that I think I'm going to be working it forever, and I can get the shits and say it's not fair, but why? And I used to wonder as a young person, why do I have this affliction whereas other people don't? Is it just because I'm, do other people sit there and say, do they go through what I have to go through and say, don't overeat that, don't eat too much, just resist that? I don't think they do. It's not something that they don't overeat. I'm not saying that they do. I'm not saying that we eat the same thing, because I'd overeat things. But are they going through that constant thing that I'm going through in my mind, saying, resist that? It's like a constant sort of working at resisting, not, doing something that I shouldn't be doing. And I sort of resigned to the fact that, because there's been so many times where I've been through that and I've been super fit, and then, I've taken my hand off I've taken my foot off the brake, and boom, all of a sudden I'm in a bad place again. Then I work hard and bring it down, and I take my foot off the gas, and boom, I'm overweight again. So it's just something that I've resigned to the fact that I need to do something constantly, and I need to come up with techniques and strategies to be mindful of that. And, adventure racing's a great way, because there's always something to do that I enjoy doing. Just to be good at it, I just need to be, lighter.
Yeah, right. So obviously, I remember our very first phone call, and you explained to me that you'd probably been up and down from like a really solid fit weight to, being overweight and unhappy with the way you're looking and feeling, like 4 or 5 times or significant times in your life where that's happened. Obviously, for anyone who's been through that, and you are certainly not the only one, but you're probably one of the few people who's been through it 5 or 6 times, because you never went, oh, well, I just can't do it then. You went, okay, well, I'll try something else. I'll try something else. In your analysis of that experience, what are you learning from those previous, let's just call them failures. What are you learning from those previous failures of maintaining the healthy weight where you really want to be at? What is it that you're now bringing to this, your life moving forwards to help you resolve those things?
To me, one thing that I probably identified when it comes to that type of thing is that it starts in your head, right? In the sense of it starts about having the right mindset, because when you take your foot off the gas for whatever, let's say I've finished a big race and said, okay, cool, all that training, all that, I just need to relax. I need to, because that's been so many, 4 o'clock alarm mornings and training, almost pretty much every day, and putting in, 50 hours a month in training, and just, huge treks and things like that. You just say, you know what, I'm stuffed, I'm buggered. I need to just relax. It's about sort of still maintaining that mindset to say, okay, relax, but don't forget it. Don't sort of sit there and stay constant in doing it. It's very difficult there. I call them upward spirals and downward spirals, and they go both ways. Everybody knows about downward spirals. We hear about that all the time. You do something wrong and it has a cascading effect, and then before you know it, you're in this downward spiral to everything's stuffed. Your relationships are bad, your job's bad, all that sort of stuff. But I also see it in reverse, and I call it an upward spiral. It can be as simple as, okay, Monday morning, committed to going to the gym, so I'm going to go there. So you go there and you absolutely don't feel like it, but you said you were going to, you told a few people you were going to be there, so you go there. You go there that day, and you know what, you finish it and you feel better. You feel better about yourself because you say, you know what, I didn't want to do it. I met that resistance and I pushed through it. So you feel good about yourself, and then after that, when it comes to lunchtime, you think, well, you know what, I'll eat a little bit better now because I don't want to waste that good session, and I feel good about myself. And that carries on, and now all of a sudden you've had a good day, and that good day turns into okay, well, cool, that actually felt really good, so I'm going to repeat that. Before you know it, then all of a sudden you're feeling better about yourself. Now you feel better about yourself, you walk into a room just a bit more confident. You can deal with people, your stress levels are a lot lower. All of a sudden you're dealing with people better, your relationships are better, and it creates an upward spiral, all because of that decision that started, not all because of it, but it started with a decision to, just do something difficult on a Monday morning. You did it right. Got to be careful that it doesn't go the other way. So, you know what, bugger it, I don't feel like it, and then it can literally happen, and it can really be as simple as that one decision. Is it easy? No, it's not easy, and I think that's something that possibly people think somehow that people who go to gyms, or people who go for a run, or when you're up early in the morning and you see somebody running at 5:30, they think, for some reason it's easy for them, but it's not easy for me. But I can tell you, it's not easy for them. It's tough. I mean, it gets easier to convince yourself because it becomes habit forming, but it's not easy for anyone.
Yeah, and you'll still have days where everything feels like it's conspiring against you.
Yeah.
And you really do have to push yourself to do it. I've been training in the gym for 10, 12 years. And every now and again, I have a session where I just do not feel like being there. And I know my performance isn't going to be good too. Like, I've not had enough sleep. I've not eat well enough. And so I know I'm just going to go in there to basically just suck for the whole session. But sometimes that is a step that you need to take. Sometimes you've got to put your ego aside and accept the fact that I'm just going to go in there and do my best for today. It's not going to be my best, but it's going to be my best for today. And to not let a lack of perfection stop you from taking the best action you can take in the moment.
When I run into those days and I sit there and do it, I think to myself, okay, this is a warm bed that I don't want to get out of. You know, this is fine. My alarm's gone off. I can just get it and cancel it, and don't have to do that. But how am I going to feel at lunchtime? How am I going to feel at 12 o'clock? You know, am I going to feel better, or am I going to feel worse? Now, sometimes if you're injured and you can legitimately say, I shouldn't do that, well, then the answer is I'm going to feel better. So don't go. You know, that's probably the time to rest and just to do have that release. But if you say, no, listen, I know I shirked it, that's going to make me feel worse at lunchtime. You know, in the middle of the day, I'm not going to feel as good as I should, because there's so many of those situations that you're talking about, whereas you don't feel like it, you do it. And I find it's about 20 to 25 minutes usually that it takes. All of a sudden, you're feeling better and you think, geez, I'm glad I'm here. Even if you've got, 35 minutes of a hard session still to come, it's just your body's moving, you're doing it. The hardest part was getting there, you've done it. And then for the rest of the day, it just feels so much better that you've actually done it and you've achieved it. That's gym specific, but I'm sure that's relatable to, all sorts of other,
challenges,
difficult situations, challenges.
Definitely. One of the maybe the best things we learned from our reading of the book Own Your Day by Marcus Aubrey. We had different opinions on how that book went and whatnot. But one good thing he said about that situation in the book was, don't make 2 mistakes in a row. Like if you eat a shit meal, or if you skip a session, or if you have an argument with your missus, okay, we all make mistakes, but then how do you back it up? Is your next meal going to be a shit meal as well, or do you get back on that horse? Because that, like you said about the guy who you see running the block every single day, it's not the fact that guy just sails through it all the time. It's and the biggest difference perhaps between that guy and the dude who wants to run but never manages to really get into it is that the dude who's created the habit has just gotten better at getting back on the horse when he's fallen off it. And that's the biggest thing that I think, the biggest discriminating factor between the people who are getting what they want out of their life and the people who don't. It's not they don't have crap days. It's not that they don't fail. It's not that they don't feel disappointed sometimes. It's not that they don't make a dick of themselves. It's just that they get back on the horse a lot quicker. They don't allow it to stop them from taking the action.
Yeah, and definitely. And I the way I see that is to put it in a picture, to visualize it. I often think about it like I remember one time I was asked, if you want to really achieve something difficult, or if you've got a goal, what attributes do you need to achieve that goal? And one of the things that I said that I don't know whether it was correct, the narrative, but I believe it, is that you need to be malleable, right? And you need to be flexible. You need to change. I mean, a lot of people will think that, if you've got a course, you need to stay on course. You need to be dogged. You need to be determined. It's like, yeah, but if you keep running into that brick wall, maybe you've got to come at it from this angle. Maybe you need to come. And I mean, and when I talk about, my health journey, my weight loss journey, I attribute it to that in the sense of, you just got to keep on trying. You don't sort of go, oh, that didn't work. And you're right. I hear that a lot. Oh no, I couldn't do that. Or no, I tried that and it didn't work. Or it's like, well, hold on. There's other ways to do it. You sort of just gave up on it. But there's always a way to come at it. And if it didn't work, well, then come at it from a different angle. If that didn't work, well, then drive around the back and have a look and see if there's if there's a way in there. But the ultimate goal is the ultimate goal. However you achieve it, just you may have an idea. Hey, this is the path that I've set out to achieve that goal. This is what I'm going to do. And then you get there and think, you know what, that's not working. Don't abandon the goal. Just maybe you've got to come up with a different way. And in life, there's all sorts of things that can happen with that. Kids are a classic. They're a big obstacle that we need to work our way around. A lot of us have got kids. Most of us in Unbreakable Man. That's just another thing to work out. It's just another part of our life that we need to work out opportunities for. Saturday training, bring them. They love it. Things like that. You can sort of sit there and say, no, I need to have my Saturday family time, the weekends family time.
Combine.
Or put it in together, I had to strategically, convince my wife to come along to adventure races, that they were going to be these fun camping weekends. Yeah, and she did. She came along, and the kids came along, and Charlie would do the, do adventure races with us. We'd pick the short ones, and it was great. But it's it's not a matter of saying no, that doesn't work for me, or I can't do it. It's like,
how?
There's a way.
Yeah. How can I do this? Yeah. One thing I think that is very indicative of how successful someone is going to be is how many times are you willing to fail on the journey to accomplishing the goal? If your answer is once, okay, well, we can all pretty much tell how successful you're going to be. If your answer is twice, okay, it's better than once, but it's still like you got a very high chance of never getting there. Then, if your answer is I don't care, I'll just do it until I hit the goal, then guess what? You're either going to hit the goal or you're going to die trying. You know what I mean? And if you've spent your whole life working towards the thing that mattered most to you, and even if you didn't get there, you probably still had a great life then, didn't you? And perhaps the biggest obstacle for most people is then that they just don't know what matters most to them. And figuring that out is even a journey in and of itself. But I think that once you have figured that out, God, that just opens your eyes to so much different stuff. It does make doing the hard work a lot easier because I don't know, in your heart that it's going to be worth it purely because it's what you're passionate about or what lights you up.
Yeah.
So my last question, little closing question, is who is the person in your life that you believe has most influenced the man that you are today? Could even be a few people.
Yeah, no, pretty easy as my dad would be that's probably the easiest one. Maybe it's a little bit typical, but probably more so because of, and I think back on what we were talking about before we ran cameras. I think we were talking about the little clip I was watching with Jamie Lee Curtis, and she said that her biggest legacy is going to be sobriety, in the sense of that she was breaking the chain of poverty. Breaking the chain of addiction and abuse. Yeah, because she saw it growing up, and she, from her parents and her parents' parents and what have you. And if she can demonstrate it, if she can model sobriety to her children, there's a good chance that she's going to break that chain of generational dependency. And I just saw my dad go through, and the stories that I used to get from his childhood, and compared to what he delivered as from his parenting and his upbringing, was just that. It was a break in the chain of that old-fashioned, old-fashioned, almost sort of abusive parenting. I don't want to say abusive, but you know what baby,
it's hardcore.
You know what baby boomers were like.
Sure.
A bit of a flogging was on par for the course. And just the way that he sort of really cast an objective eye on things. So rather than just regurgitating what he learned, he sort of looked at the world and was objective about it, and thought, okay, I'm not just going to follow a liberal narrative to say, well, this is progression, so I'm going to suck up everything that's coming. I'm not going to be as conservative as my parents, because they were a bit old school and good old-fashioned racism. We're going to break away from that, or homophobia, or what have you. He was quite liberal along a lot of those things, but he didn't just sort of chew up everything that was that came out from the progressive side either. So, as much as that, he sort of then in turn didn't impose his values. He just sort of demonstrated, I guess, critical thinking to say, well, listen, in each situation and in each environment, just think about that. So much like what I was talking about earlier, in the sense of just having the ability to look at, whether it be a relationship or a situation or a goal that you're trying to achieve, just trying to look at that objectively, take in all the information that you can, and then make your assessment, and then make your determination, rather than just
being reactive,
doing what everybody else has always done. So that's what's always been done. Okay, but is it the right thing to do? That's not just because it's always been done like that doesn't mean it's the way that it's something that we should do constantly. Otherwise, we just wouldn't progress, would we?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and part of that is having the maturity and the courage to admit when you're wrong as well, right? And go, wait a second, that's actually a really good point. I'm going to update my beliefs because what you've just said does feel more right to me. Or does, for example, talking about taking your partner's perspective into account on things, man, that actually is a great point. I'd never thought about it that way. I think that's a massive part about being a great leader and a great parent, is being able to update your beliefs when something beneficial and perhaps more powerful comes along. And maybe even being willing to learn from your children. I've got more life experience, so you're going to listen to me. Or sometimes they've got a gem to offer you.
No, definitely agree with that. Yeah, no, and what I was saying earlier is their influences are different to what influenced us at our age. In the sense of the influence that my daughter's receiving, what's molding her worldview isn't the same influences that molded my worldview. She gets influence from me, sure, but she's also getting all sorts of influences around. So for us to hold the same opinion on topics, well, that's not very likely, because she's actually getting that from everywhere else. So much like what I was saying earlier, just try and understand that just because she thinks of it that way, or I think of it this way, I think of it this way, not because I'm, completely intelligent, but because I received my influence at that particular time in that particular world. The world that they're living in is different to the world we're living in, so it stands to reason that they're going to have different views of it.
Absolutely. Nice one. Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Greg. I appreciate you having yourself to come down here, mate.
It was a good one, wasn't it?
I think so.
We covered a few topics. Yeah, that was good.
Awesome. Cheers, guys. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Hey, mate, I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Unbreakable Man podcast. If you did, it would be absolutely fantastic if you could leave us a 5-star review, because that's going to help us get our message in front of more men who need to hear it. Now, if you have some feedback for me, I'd love to hear that too. Comment down below. And if you just need some mini doses of Unbreakable Man motivation throughout your week, then you can follow us across all social platforms. On Facebook, it's Unbreakable Man Challenge. On Instagram, it's Unbreakable Man _challenge. And on TikTok and YouTube, it's just Unbreakable Man. Your support would be absolutely invaluable. Now, last but not least, do not forget, men aren't born, they're built.